Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. It's really lovely to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this. Um, I'll do a very nope, I will do a very, very brief introduction, and I'm just going to see if I can drive my computer properly to um, share a couple of things with you. So let me share my screen. I just want to introduce myself. I know that most of you, I think, know me already. Yes, I'll show you my screen. So I'm Daniele. I work at Canonical as a director of engineering. I've been involved in Python and Django for, I can actually say it's a long time now. So in my case, it's about nearly 15 years. I'm especially involved in the African Python movement. I'll be in PyCon Namibia in 2 weeks from today. And the other thing I am is a software documentation disciplinarian, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Actually, I want to reduce the amount of talking that I do because I love talking, and that's what bad teachers do. Because instead, what I want is for you to be doing some stuff instead. So I see that most of you are retiring behind your cameras, turned off cameras, which is fine because that saves energy and bandwidth. But it's actually good if we make this into a discussion. So feel free to interrupt, ask questions, we'll interact. And if you don't volunteer, then I will choose volunteers of my own for you to do things. What I would like to do in this session is not try and, I don't really believe in teaching, but what I want to do is for things to be different afterwards. I want to give you confidence about touching Django's documentation, or indeed documentation in general, but we're looking and we're concerned with Django. So that's what I want to be different afterwards. If afterwards you feel, oh yeah, I can do that, and I'll give it a shot, then I'll be really pleased. That's my aim. I do need to do a tiny bit of talking before we get started, otherwise just to give it a little bit of context. So in documentation, the kind of documentation that we're dealing with in Django or software generally, we are dealing with documentation that serves the practitioner in a domain of skill. So somebody who uses Django is exercising a skill. Somebody who's learning Django is learning a skill. It's a craft or practice, ancient Greek techne, which is where the word technology comes from. So it's always about skill, or you could call it practical knowledge. So it's knowledge that involves the hands as well as the mind. So it's a certain kind of knowledge, practical rather than theoretical knowledge. It's lots of different names. So the challenge for documentation is to serve somebody who is a practitioner of skill in a certain domain. And the test of quality is whether documentation is adequately serving the needs of those users. Now, very, very briefly, in every skill, sometimes we're on the left-hand side, sometimes we're on the right-hand side. Sometimes we're acquiring the skill, we're learning, we're becoming good at it. We can call it being at study. Sometimes we're working, we're being good at it, we're applying the skill. It doesn't matter whether it's roller skating or Django or flying an airplane or driving a racing car, it's exactly the same. Sometimes you're in the study mode, sometimes you're on the right-hand side in the application mode. And sometimes in the skill, the stuff that's important is only in the head. Cognition, it's matters of truth, like, facts. But sometimes it's in the realm of the body, of action, of doing things with the hands. And every skill incorporates both those things. So I've shown you 2 dimensions now, and they split the territory up into 4 needs of the user. When I want to learn the skill, when I want to get something done, when I want to know something, and when I need to understand something. And these are all quite separate things. For example, knowing and understanding are really distinct from each other. But what they give us is this, and this is my map of documentation. And I think it's a map of documentation, a complete map of documentation, because it is a complete map of the needs of the practitioner of skill. You can see there's action on the top and cognition on the bottom. There's acquisition on the left and application on the right. And they give us 4 different kinds of documentation which correspond to 4 fundamental needs. And I'm going to actually stop right there with the theory. We can come and, I can talk all day about this theory, and we can say more about it. But I want to stop talking about that now, and I'm going to try and come out of this and go to here. So now you should be seeing, you are screen sharing, yes, but what are you seeing from my screen sharing?
See Mastodon.
You see Mastodon, great. Okay, so this was very timely because this popped up. I don't know if you can see it well enough. I'm not quite sure how to improve it so it's better for sharing, but maybe if I do. Sorry, I'm dealing with so many windows I'm not quite familiar with. Let me put that one over there.
I think Control plus might help, or Shift plus.
Yes, that's a good idea. Okay. So this popped up on Mastodon the other day. I don't know if somebody else might have seen it. This is from Jeff, that I know some of you know, that there was a little note in the tutorial about the Django tutorial about race conditions, what they are, and then a link to say how you can avoid them. And Carlton, whom I think you also probably know, said that's one of those interesting things that's also irrelevant, that doesn't need to be in the tutorial. And Carlton has quoted me from the Dear Taxes website that in the tutorial, your job is to guide the learner to a successful conclusion. There will be many interesting diversions along the way that you can ignore. And I think Carlton's right. I think the tutorial would be better if that note just disappeared. And I think Jeff's also right. If you're going to face race conditions, you're probably going to have other things by your side that help you deal with them. And I don't know who Fancy Sandwiches is, but Fancy Sandwiches had an opposing view that this is an important concept, which is true. And certain people might want to know it up front, which is also true, and suggest putting it in a short section at the end of the tutorial. And I disagree with that, actually. So I think what's actually happened is that Carlton actually has indeed removed it. And I just posted that, I think, this morning, that I think the only thing I care about in the tutorial is for the people following the tutorial to become comfortable and familiar with the concepts, the tools, the workflows, and terminology. And I don't need them to do anything more. I just literally want them to be comfortable. I don't even want them to remember anything. So I'm going to stop now and ask where you would have voted on this puzzle or this dilemma. What you would have done, what your instincts are. And you don't have to agree with me either.
Hi, Daniela. This is Ryan Cheeley. I saw this come across Mastodon as well, and I agreed with your sentiment that it did seem to be out of place, and the sentiment that both Jeff and Carlton had made as well. And actually, I'm struggling with trying to get my team to understand and implement diataxis where I work, and I felt this to be super helpful in terms of having some conversation starters with them as to what goes into tutorials and what doesn't go into tutorials. So I think that like these kinds of conversations are super important because it can kind of help have a real world example that people talk about and then something is done about it. So
yeah. Anyone else?
So I do agree. I think as a beginner, it's not useful to direct them to another section to have them go down a rabbit hole, which might lead to other rabbit holes that they end up kind of losing track of what they were originally trying to do. But I guess the only thought I have is whether the example itself is perhaps not the best designed, because I don't know if it was originally designed as like because sometimes I see tutorials put in deliberate gotchas so that you experience certain things and they can talk about certain things. So I don't know if perhaps it shouldn't have this potential race condition anyway, kind of thing. Because I feel like sometimes people look at the tutorials to find, or like the things inside the Django docs to find the best possible code kind of thing, because it's in the Django docs. So that's the only thing that I think is maybe, but I agree that I think this concept is not, it's too soon for the very first tutorial in Django to bring across this concept.
You said an important word there, which is experience, because the tutorial is all about the experience that you give to somebody, the learning experience. And the tutorial is all in the action part, because when anybody is learning a skill, any skill, they learn it by doing it in the hands of a teacher, a tutor that they can trust. That's why it's called a tutorial, because it literally implies a tutor. So I definitely don't like gotchas, because that undermines the trust. I think that we want comfort for the user. So I think giving people alarming scenarios about things that could go wrong, that are not going to go wrong now, is not relevant. In the tutorial, in the teaching situation, we always bracket off the rest of the outside world to make it safe. And that applies, if you're teaching a child to ride a bike, to make scrambled eggs, there are all kinds of things that could be known and need to be known eventually for that person to be really good at this skill, cooking or cycling, but they don't matter now. They can come later. Right now, we want to give them something that's a point from which they can always get back to that point and say, oh yeah, I know how to do the first stitches if they're a medical student. I know how to make the admin work in Django, and they will take the next step. So this is the distinction between learning and teaching. We always want to teach. And I think the only thing we actually can do in a tutorial is give people an experience that they can learn from. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at the first, no, wrong one. Okay, so here's the writing your first Django app part 1. I want to start by looking at this tutorial with you. And what I want you to do is talk you through some of my thinking about it. And then I'll show you another page in the same of the tutorial, and I want you to do the talking. So if I've got it right, you're seeing my Google document, I guess. Yes, good. Okay, so here's writing your Django application part 1. I've just dumped it into a Google document. Is that large enough for you to read, or do you want me to make it bigger? Okay. What I've done is marked things that I think are important. So let's learn by example. I love it. Every word in that sentence is great. Let us together. What we are concerned with is learning. And by example, that's how our human brains work. We see lots of different concrete examples, and we generalize from the concrete particular examples. Whereas what teachers always want to do is give people the universal picture and the general picture, the overview, and hope that people will have it stick in their minds. It never will. It only comes out of concrete things. Oh, I saw a hand up.
Yeah,
Yes, sorry,
Danielle,
Daniel.
Yes, please interrupt rather than putting a hand up. So just please interrupt. Yes.
there's a
Please-
request to make it larger.
Yeah.
Oh, a request to make it larger. Yes. Yes, of course I can. I think that will that do?
Yeah, I think so. I hope
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. This stuff on the side doesn't seem to get any bigger, but maybe there's a different zoom in. Yeah, maybe that zooms everything, and then okay, I hope that will do. So that's great. That's exactly what a tutorial should be doing. We'll walk you through. We're doing it together. You're in the room with the student, or the students in the room with the teacher. It's going to consist of two parts: an admin side and a public side. Those words right now, I'm a beginner in Django, they just bounce off me. This is the tutorial author reassuring themselves about what they're going to be writing. This is not for the benefit of the person reading it. So I don't like that. I would delete that. We'll assume you'll have Django installed already. Great. I'm assuming this. You have to assume some things in your tutorial. I'm telling you what I'm assuming. So I'm making sure that you're expecting what I'm expecting too. Oh yes, this is it, a small detail. Please head over. Now, there are many English speakers for whom please head over will be a very unusual construction. So simplify it. See. And you don't need to say please. It's just not really necessary. So that's a basic thing. I like this. This is a kind of aside about naming. Now, maybe we could make that sentence a tiny bit shorter, but it raises a little flag, waves it in the air, and then quickly moves on. And I like that. It tells us that this is because you know perfectly well that somebody creating their first project is likely to call it test, for example, which is where they're going to run into trouble. This, I'm sorry, I realize it's a bit hard to see what it's saying there, but this is the stuff about if your background is in plain old PHP. I see absolutely no reason to keep that in there. That's background information that's just getting in the way of what the user is doing. This, on the other hand, is great. Let's look at what it created. This is what you should expect. Oh, you didn't see it? Now you know that something's a bit wrong. On the other hand, I would give money if 1 person in 10 actually read any of that. They can see it in front of them. They just want to go to the next step. Let's verify. Let's do it together. Verifying, that's also really good. You will see. Brilliant. That's exactly what we need to be saying to the user. Ignore. Don't worry about that. Reassurance. I like that. And you might think, oh, well, just a minute ago, we were talking about production and race conditions. Why are we worrying about that question now? Again, it's just a little flag. And sometimes these things, you just have to be a good experiencer of documentation. I still remember this from the very first time I used Django all those years ago. There's another example further on. So sometimes these little flags do help something, even if somebody doesn't exactly dig into that's fine. It's a little flag about the bigger world out there. It's like saying to somebody when they're making it with your child in the kitchen, be careful because the handle of the pan will be hot. Oh, this is something. This is great. This is a little bit snippet of explanation that just highlights these 2 words which are very overloaded in our discipline and dispatches them really quickly. And then it spoils it with that imported as its own top-level module. You know, I would have to sit down and think before I tried to explain what that actually meant to someone. So this is for the reader, and that was not for the reader. That was for the writer reassuring themselves. What is a view? It's not actually, we don't even know what a view is here. And I think that it's invaluable, you know, if you're going to teach somebody to make scrambled eggs, at least they'll have eaten scrambled eggs at least once beforehand. Oh yes, sorry, I didn't see that question. I'll show you the let me make this document publicly accessible, of course. Yes, I'll it's anyone with the link. Done. Oops, and then I can copy that link and I'll paste it in the chat. There you are. Yes, sorry. Did I miss any other questions? No. Okay, so can somebody here say in one short sentence what a view is that would make sense to somebody doing their very first view? A view is a what?
I think it's a thing. Well, not a thing. It is something that connects the information that you. Okay, never mind. I had a good analogy, but I used to say it connects your information with to make it feel. Ah, crap. Never mind. Ignore me. I used to have a good explanation for this.
It's not easy, okay? But if somebody is going to improve this tutorial, and I think my notes here are actually rather decent notes for somebody who wants to improve the tutorial. I think that's a challenge that somebody's going to have to solve. Okay, nobody said documentation was easy. And coming
I got
up,
it.
go on.
Sorry. The view is the code that collects all the data that you want to show to the user and makes it available to the template. Still a bit too technical, but we're getting there.
Okay. I like the language of collecting and showing because that's language that I don't need to do extra cognitive work to understand. I'm not even that bothered about whether you're completely correct or not. That's not so important. The important thing is that my understanding advances a little bit. So I think that would be a good starting point. Yes, Mo, you've got a hand up.
I think it is my okay, because I'm seeing a lot of weird lines. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's safe to assume that the reader knows what a request is and a response is, since like this is Django. So it can something like it's the thing that processes the request and serves a response. Will it be okay or not in this case?
I liked the language of collecting information that you want to show or something like that. I like that. Already in the language of request and response, those feel to me like things that we need to not explain them, but use them in sentences that will help somebody understand them. That's the thing that we've got to become good at doing. You don't explain a knife to somebody who's learning to cook. You give them experiences of the right knife with the right foods and the right way of holding the knife. And that's how they pick it up. Not through explaining it, but through doing something concrete that's connected to something they already know. Okay. Anyway, that's a challenge. We're not going to solve that here, but what I'm saying is that is this question, what is a view, is a real and quite challenging question in documentation. I love it.
I can read out some other versions. So there is a view as the presentation layer of your project. It's responsible for mangling with back and forth between users and backend. And another one is a view is the structures of what a page needs to do when a user interacts with a URL. Oh, sorry. A view is the instructions of what a page needs to do when a user interacts with a URL.
I like that one as well. I like the way that that one uses terms that are not presupposing familiarity with other things. So anyway, I don't think we're going to solve this now. It is difficult, but that's a good conversation for somebody to have. And to knock those ideas around. It's worth keeping some of those. You can put them into the comments, I think, actually, in this document. It chops off. What does, that's been in there, I think, for a decade or more. It chops off. Somebody could pay attention to what it might be like to experience that that sentence and not really understand, not already know what's going on. So I didn't like that. And then we get to the end. My least favorite part of that tutorial. Look at this. Here is the table of contents of this page. We've got I think we've got about 9 items in there, and 4 of them are these path methods. That's it in the tutorial. So why are they so important? They take up nearly half of the table of contents. And they take up, where is it? They take up all this. Look at them. Not one person has read those. I'm not saying it's not good information. It's just not information for here and now, because there's nothing we can do with those. And the tutorial is always, remember, it's in the action part of our world. It's about doing things. Okay, so those are my thoughts. You've got this document now. Feel free to take it and argue about it. And maybe I'm wrong or maybe I'm right about some of these ideas. But I would like now us to do the same thing with another page. And let's do it with this one. I'm going to share this one with you as well. But this time, I'm going to do much less talking and you're going to do the talking. Oh, you should be not viewers, you should be editors. Okay. So I'll make you an editor of the other one as well. Okay, let me share this link with you. Yep. Okay. So, and you can be as rude as you like about this one, because I actually wrote this tutorial all those years ago. The testing one. So that make that one editor. Done. Okay, so let's go back to this one. So we're all in. I want you to look at this sentence by sentence and share your thoughts, put them as comments, talk about them here. And I warn you, if I don't get volunteers, then I'll start choosing them. So. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question since nobody's. What is wrong? Here it is. It's this one here. What is wrong with the first part of? Oh, sorry, wrong one. Writing your first Django at part 5. What is wrong with a large part of this document? Why is it bad? What did I get wrong?
So from what we were talking about, you were talking about earlier, of tutorials are about action and doing things. This starts with a question and answer of providing information and background on a number of things rather than getting into writing the test immediately. That's my guess.
Yeah. I remember writing this about 11 or so years ago. And basically, this is me explaining testing to myself. This is me reassuring myself. Look at all this stuff. It's not bad stuff, but I don't think it lives here, I would just simply remove it. Maybe there's one thing that I would keep. I think there's something about why do it right now in the middle of the tutorial? And I think that might be the only thing worth doing. Why are we doing this? Let me show you why this is important. The rest of it, I think that stuff actually could go and be placed somewhere else in Django's documentation. Because I don't think it's bad stuff. It's just that it doesn't belong here. Does anybody disagree with that? Or does anybody feel that it needs to be there to help somebody who's doing stuff with, sorry, wrong page again, with tutorials, or with testing?
Well, a couple of minutes ago, we were discussing like how to explain views to the reader. So we tried to be verbose about what a view is. So I think we can somewhat extend that logic here to a reader that like might not be familiar with like tests and so to try to be more verbose before we do stuff like we did in the view. But here it's it's another sub article or a sub thing. But yeah, we should try to be more verbose since we established this from the beginning to make sure we're on the same page or something like that.
I think that, no, I think I would actually disagree with you about, I don't think we want to explain what a view is. I don't think we can explain what a view is. All we can do is give somebody a bit of a handle on it. That's the maximum that we want to do. So that when they next hear the view, they think, oh yes, it's that thing that collects data and then shows it. Or it's the instructions for what to do when somebody interacts with a URL. That's not really an explanation. That's just a little handle, a little label that somebody can, that's small enough for somebody to keep in their mind. So
I think with this test stuff that's at the top, and I get why it's the reassurance. I think it's come with some background that a lot of people don't write tests. And so why do we go through a tutorial and show how to write tests? And it's a little bit of like encouraging people that they should write tests is here. So but maybe that's covered by that why, and then it can be linked further off for.
Sarah, you mentioned driving lessons, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So if your driving instructor says, okay, Sarah, now we are going to practice this. Are you going to say, well, why do we have to practice that? Is that thought going to occur in your mind?
Probably not.
Probably not. And even if it occurs in your mind, because of the situation you're in, here's you, the learner, and there's the instructor, you won't say it. You might think, why am I doing this? But you'll just go along with it.
Yeah.
And then you'll find at the end of course I needed to know that. You'll realize why. Only teenagers who are having driving lessons with their parents say, why do I have to know this? Everybody else just obeys the teacher. And that's part of the teaching contract. Imagine you were having your first flying lesson. The instructor doesn't say, okay, I'm now go into a lengthy thing about why this is important to know. We're going to do this. I'm the instructor. I'm in charge. I'm the authority. My part of the bargain is to keep you safe. Your part of the bargain is to follow my instructions. So I would get rid of all of that stuff. I think the rest of that document is actually pretty good. Go on.
There's Marika has a question.
Yes, please. Question.
First, my compliments to Tim. You practiced really well. Yay. I was thinking with regards to the difference between giving a little handhold about views and explaining testing. would you also consider different approaches between general programming concepts like unit testing and Django specific concepts like views?
That's a good question. And I think we would need to agree on who our audience is of this tutorial. Is it somebody who's already got some programming experience, or do we think that it's somebody without any? So, for example, in the Django Girls tutorial, they make that really clear what they expect of the user. And I think that works brilliantly because that image of the person who's on the other end is always in their minds. So the answer is I don't think it matters which one you choose, as long as you have thought about it and that everybody who's contributing to the 9 different parts of the tutorial also more or less agree with each other. Yeah.
I was thinking maybe sometimes people have just really good tutorials about a specific subject or have very good official documentation, that it makes more sense to just add a note like, do you want to learn this in depth? Follow this other link, or maybe add some nomenclature page at the start of the tutorial, like these are all the terms we're going to discuss, and here's some useful links if you want to know more, but you don't have to.
I much prefer your first suggestion of just putting a link to, oh, you want to know more about testing, go and read it over there, so somebody can go and do it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. What I think I got right in this is that it tells, I said examples. Examples are fantastic for your reader. They are concrete things in front of them, and they will use the examples to synthesize the general cases. They will abstract from the examples. That's what we're good at. We don't need to. How many of you explained a triangle to a child? None of you, but every child you know who can more or less speak knows what a triangle is because they abstracted from examples, and that's what we do all the time. So that's one thing that's really good. The other thing that the thing that I like, I think did well here, it tells a really nice story. So narrative draws us along. We are really good with narratives. We can remember, ask a 12-year-old to repeat the entire plot of Lord of the Rings to you, and they will do it because we are fantastic at dealing with narrative. So yeah, I think there's some opportunities there. Now, what should we do with all this stuff? Should we just throw it away, or could we do something else with it? Well, I think we can actually do something quite useful with it. So there's a lot of material in the tutorial that I think should be removed. But we've got a topic page for Django and testing. Ah, yes, I'm going to show you a slide now if I can find the right way to do it, I think. Where are they? I did have it. Oh, yes, here we are. Look. This is how Django's documentation is supposedly organized. This is not quite true. This is broken down a lot. But in the Ataxis, in the framework that I very briefly introduced to you earlier, there are tutorials, which are action for learning, how-to guides, which describe action for applying your skill rather than acquiring it. That's the distinction between a how-to guide and a tutorial. And Django has them both. Tutorials that take you by the hand, step by step. The instructor takes you by the hand. The how-to guides assume some knowledge, but they're for doing actual work. They're not for learning. They're for applying to your work. Then, in the Ataxis, we have the stuff that happens, or that's for the at the cognitive rather than the action level realm rather. The facts. That's what reference is. It describes the machinery. It's where you look things up. There's no action implied in it. It just tells you these are the facts. This is a function that does this. This method requires these arguments and so on. And then the topic guides are for background information and explanation. They help fill up our picture. They give us knowledge. They're not for executing our skill, but for acquiring it. But they're also not about action, they're about cognition. So we've got these 4 types of documentation built into Django already. And one of them is indeed the testing topic, which is not that one. Not, in fact, it's this one, testing in Django, and it's very short. So I think maybe this is that explanation page where we could put some of that stuff that I didn't like in the tutorial. I think that could go there quite happily. But look, there's a second topic page, which seems a bit odd. You know, why would you have 2 explanation pages about the same thing? You've got the introduction to testing over here. Sorry, here. And then you've got this other one, which is supposedly the testing overview. But if you look at this one, sorry, if you look at this one, tell me if you think that this really is explaining anything, or if it's something that you would use when you are actually writing tests. Anyone? Any?
Yeah, this seems like a how-to rather than this is actions. All I'm seeing is our actions, not like knowledge.
Yeah, I yeah, sorry, I'm flicking around between trying to get my pages in the right place. I agree with you. I think that this mostly looks like a how-to guide. What I'm going to do is just to try and manage my windows a bit, I'm going to share a third window with you, but this ideas one. So let me make that available to everybody. Anyone with a link can become an editor. Okay, and let me share that one here. So yeah, so I think that this looks more like a how-to guide, mostly. It says, you know, look at this. The document is split into 2 primary sections. First, we explain how to write tests and how to run them. This is where you'd go if you wanted to helping hand while running your tests. Now, you'd have to go through this and find out, consider for yourself, is everything in here really a how-to guide? Because often what happens is that stuff gets mixed up. There might be some stuff in here that's not really a how-to guide. Does anybody have a suggestion what actually to do with this document? What would be the first thing that we could do to make this better?
Maybe copy the other stuff in the tutorial and move the practical stuff there, like switch up the things.
Sorry, okay, so we've got some in the tutorial. We've got some kind of cognitives, we've got some cognitive, we've got some stuff for the head, and then we've got some stuff for the hands down after it, yeah, in the tutorial. And I think the explanation stuff should come out. So that's one question that we should solve. Where should we put this? So what were you suggesting? Can you repeat that for me, please, Mo?
Yeah. Okay, sorry, my earbuds are pretty low on battery, but I was saying that we maybe can move the cognitive stuff to the how to, and then move the practical examples to the tutorial because it fits there better.
Ah, okay, good. No, thank you for that. That's good. So let me share this with you. The tutorials and practicals, the reason they get confused with each other is that because, sorry, tutorials and how-to guides, they get confused with each other because they are both practical. So if we've got explanation stuff hiding in the tutorial, I would take it out of the tutorial, but I wouldn't put it in a how-to guide. I would put it in explanation stuff. You know, in fact, I would put it in the overview, the initial overview of testing, which was this one here, the introduction for it, maybe. But what would you suggest to do with this page? What would be one thing that we could do with this page that would start to make things feel a bit better?
So I don't know. But are we trying to split it into like problem, solution, or something like this?
I would rename it to how to write and run tests.
Okay.
That would be the first thing I would do, because now I've put writing and running tests is an unclear title. The title running and writing tests allows lots of things to slip in there. It's quite easy to slip in stuff about running tests. Whereas one of the things that we realize is that this is about how to write tests, how to run them, and other people notice that. Let's change the title, give it a better title. And I'm not sure if you can see the URL, but the URL, we should move it out of topics and into the how-to section. And once it's got the name, we can start making it live up to the name. So changing the names of things is often a really good trick to help you, not trick, but a good technique to help you onto the right path. Because there's now a signal. And if somebody starts writing long-winded explanation in here, we say, well, no, this is a how-to guide. The explanation lives somewhere else. So I think that's worth doing with. So what if something in this page is actually explanation material and not how-to material? Should that prevent us from acting?
Since the how-to assumes like knowledge, or since you're doing something, I think it's safe to assume that the person I think you should link to an explanation or something like another knowledge. Yeah.
I agree. And yes, so let's have a look at Django's logging documentation, okay? So before, in the bad old days, there was one logging page in topics, which mixed up explanation, reference, and how-to. And I think 2 years ago, I split it into 3 documents. So we've got this logging overview, the introduction. This is where you come in. I'll tell you about the cast of characters. You know, I'll set the scene for you. I'll tell you about it, but I won't tell you what to do. And I split out all the how-to stuff into oh, you want to use it? Here's your page for actually doing stuff with it. And each of these 3 pages, the reference, the overview, the explanation, and the how-to, point to the other. But they're all about the same topic, but they talk about it in completely different ways. So the reference is just the facts. These are the conditions. These are the values. This is what a configuration looks like. These are the loggers that are available, and so on. This is boring stuff. You'd look it up when you needed to know it. The how-to guide is the stuff that you think, okay, yes, I'm going to improve my login configuration. You'll go here. But you might want to step back from it and have a look at your overview. And I think that is what I would like to do with our testing stuff. We're kind of running out of time now. We could spend hours and hours on this, but I'm going to leave you with homework. Okay. We have not one, not two, we've got 4 topic pages about testing. My feeling when I see that is that people started tidying stuff up. They think, okay, there's a box marked testing. Let's throw some stuff about testing into it. And the first thing we can do to improve that, I said, change the name. In other words, the first thing we can do is label one of the bloody boxes. That will really help. And since this box seems to contain mostly how-to stuff in there, let's rename it to how-to. And then I would accept that as a pull request right now in Django. I think that would be a good pull request to rename this page and the place where it is. That would be at least knowing what's in one of the boxes. I think that the third topic page is probably, or possibly, mostly a reference page. I'm not sure yet. We'd have to look at it in more detail. I think this is because this one is because there were so many boxes that people just thought, okay, let's call this one advanced because I can't work out how to put the other stuff in there. So we're going to start wrapping up. What I want, I'm going to be on this. Where are we going to be where I can speak to people on the Discord, Sarah? In this channel that I was talking to you, or a special one?
Yes, you can talk to people in there's like general and there's Djangonaut Space. Yeah, general.
No, let's keep it for the people who are in this call as homework. Is that what?
Okay.
Can we do that? Because then
We can create a thread for this as a resource, but
okay.
it's going to be available to everybody that's on the server.
Okay, all right, okay. So I'll hang around in there with you. And what I'd like you to do is to start with this page, I should say, for the testing documentation, to find actions. And when I say actions, I mean something as simple as changing the title of a page. And now you might get pushback from people, say, oh, this is not a good enough pull request, but put my name on it. We'll force some of this stuff through using our, our charisma and status and so on, and we'll get changes happening. You've got some puzzles to solve, like that question about what is a view? $20 prize for the person who comes up with the shortest, best sentence that not explains it, but gives a sense of its meaning that will stick in the mind long enough for the tutorial to make sense. Okay, I see a real opportunity for this testing documentation to be transformed, starting with the tutorial that leads us into the testing overview. There's brilliant material there already. And as long as a change you're going to make is going to be an improvement, I don't care how small it is. So if it's a character improvement, that's worth a pull request. So don't try and make things perfect or solve all the problems. Or you might say, okay, this page needs to become a how-to guide, but there's a bunch of explanation stuff in the middle. Well, okay, that's fine, but naming it is still an improvement on the previous status of things. So that's worth doing. Yeah, we don't believe in these people who say, oh yeah, it's not perfect yet. Well, it doesn't need to be in documentation. It's not like code, I mean, the documentation is already not quite right. So we're making it better. Nothing's going to break. So does that sound like a fun thing we could do over a couple of weeks?
That sounds excellent. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Daniela. I will stop the recording. Thank you.
I talked way more than I wanted to, but I realized we need to do stuff, and you need to go and read about the Ataxis if you haven't done so already, and think about it and argue about it and tell me why you think it's wrong and so on. But you need to engage with those ideas. But the most important thing to do is to see something in there. You think, oh yeah, I could improve that, and then we'll talk about doing it, and we'll do it in tiny steps. But we'll do that. Okay.